When I think of samurai in a video game context, a few concepts come to mind. Highly lethal singular strikes, the flicking or wiping of blood off of a blade, and the dramatic sheathing of a katana into its scabbard. It's a pretty sword-centric verb list, but that makes sense for sword-centric video game heroes. The game I'm covering today judges that list as incomplete. Samurai weren't just a type of historical warrior, but a discrete social class, and in acknowledging that distinction, Way of the Samurai becomes a powerful cultural export instead of just samurai pop culture schlock. This significance is felt right from the choice of setting. The Meiji era of the mid-19th century is the twilight of samurai as a concept. Japan's first taste of gunboat diplomacy emasculated the ruling shogunate, and the subsequent decades saw a bloody move towards a singular central government, one that used a conscription of peasants instead of a dedicated warrior caste. Having your entire societal purpose change must have felt aimless, and Way of the Samurai taps into that aimlessness. The samurai in this game are bitter. The very first one you encounter on the first screen is mid-kidnapping a helpless damsel. Characters make mention of the future without swords, as they either resign themselves to that inevitability or fight a losing battle out of principle. Everyone's fighting each other, and the singular character in the whole game that expresses any optimism about the samurai lifestyle as a concept is a foreigner. Guns and other modern military equipment are wielded as a great equalizer by the antagonists in Way of the Samurai, allowing them to tap into force in a way that invalidates the need for a samurai class distinction. So what do? A less bold game would set you down a clear and obvious path towards samurai revolt. But in Way of the Samurai, you start by just walking around and seeing what happens. Aimlessness manifest through gameplay is one of Way of the Samurai's most important concepts. It's a short game. If you know what you're doing, even the most complicated endings only demand an hour of you. But you won't know what you're doing, and that's the point. There's only like half a dozen screens in the whole game you can freely walk between from the start, with a narrative that takes you through 2 in-game days and funnels you into one of 6 major endings. You don't really have any idea of what those endings are or how to build towards them until you've played the game at least once over. There are no objective markers or quest logs, nor any clear story purpose to prod you in a particular direction. You're just dropped at the bridge and you just kind of do whatever. It's aimlessness expressed through mechanics, and what makes it liberating instead of obtuse is that there's no singular correct path, because Way of the Samurai is secretly an immersive sim. It trades length and breadth for hyper-reactivity. Characters follow their own little schedules that can be learned and manipulated in subsequent playthroughs. You can follow their little breadcrumbs and see what story paths unfurl, or you can just take out your sword and start swinging. You're supposed to play it over and over to see the game from new angles. Those additional playthroughs aren't an enthusiast bonus, but a core part of the experience. You get an arcade-like score when you're done, complete with a cross-run ranking system and cosmetic unlocks. You can even take weapons with you into future playthroughs. There's nothing else quite like it except maybe the modern Hitman games, with its short replayable missions, scenario-based structure, and cosmetic incentives for additional playthroughs. It's worth meeting the game in this way to see how its different styles play out. The first encounter on the bridge is whatever you make of it. You can embody chivalric values and save the kidnapped damsel. You can ask to join the samurai in their kidnapping. And, more unique to Way of the Samurai, you can do nothing. Because everyone operates on a schedule, you can just let the window for action pass. Inaction becomes an action in Way of the Samurai, and funny enough, for the purposes of this particular first encounter, our noble foreign samurai will step in and save the girl if you watch the whole scenario play out. But you also don't even have to do that. You can just leave the screen and go somewhere else, opening new doors and closing a whole bunch of others. There's an eviction that takes place during day 1 that can be seen through the eyes of evictee, evictor, or bystander. The evictor is the most fun because the intimidation tactic demands you actually start picking up stools and throwing them all over the place. This same level of decision making is seen across all major story branches split across both days. They all eventually funnel into fighting the Meiji government, but whether or not you have any allies for that fight, and who they are, is dependent on the choices you did and did not make up until that point. You're left to figure a lot of this out on your own as you stumble across different characters and factions. Discovery of both scenarios and the game's very structure is part of the experience. The one thing that's explicitly told to you at the start of the game is how to talk. Speech feels like a weird thing to tutorialize until you're at the wheel of Way of the Samurai's particular implementation of it. Inaction as an action is extended into dialogue. The circle button is less a talk button than it is a contextual interrupt button. Characters talk to you but also talk around you and about their circumstances. Most of those conversations can happen with or without you, giving them a natural flow and giving you the option to pick your battles. Sometimes literally. This interject can be used mid-combat against major opponents. If you have them on death's door, you can hit the button to demand their surrender. If you're the one with the low health bar, that same button can now be an urgent plea for mercy. Sometimes granted, sometimes bargained for, and sometimes rejected. It's a great little system that gives texture to combat and an avenue to avoid Way of the Samurai's very real, very permanent deaths. Fealty to combat is probably Way of the Samurai's weakest component. A totally serviceable combo system of strikes, slashes, and guard breaks are good enough for that first playthrough, especially when you add the wrinkles of multiple sword types and unlockable special moves. But it's the inevitability of combat regardless of route that gets tiring. All paths lead to a climactic showdown that soaks half of the game's runtime. Even siding with the new Meiji government requires the same battles to be fought, opening up a join path only after you've beaten them into submission and proven your superiority. Although it would be wrong to say that there isn't a pacifist route, even if the one that does exist is a technicality. Feeding into its themes of choice and opting out of choice, Way of the Samurai supports just leaving. At any point you can exit the town and close out your run, with the gameplay incentive of getting to transfer any swords you left with into your new playthrough. It's a mechanically underbaked option, but one that still enhances the game in its own small way. Way of the Samurai is not just a game about what you do, but if you do, and it extends that philosophy all the way to opting out of the game entirely. It's a type of freedom, one that makes sense for a title that isn't just a samurai game, but specifically a wandering samurai game. I'm not going to sit here slack-jawed and pretend I don't understand why Way of the Samurai was met with lukewarm critical reception on its release. As a production, it's the 7 out of 10est game ever. You can see the seams as all of these dynamic and responsive characters sometimes get stuck thanks to their dynamism and responsiveness. No voiced dialogue is especially noteworthy in a game both as short and as conversation-focused as it is. How pieces are stuck together is far more fascinating than what's actually being joined. It's a game of tendons far more than it is a game of muscles. It's way easier to appreciate its systems than its actual drama. But the case for Way of the Samurai has never been stronger than it is now. The writing is on the walls. AAA gaming is going to enter an era of contraction, as the bloated scope and bloated budgets of cutting-edge games become both untenable and, at least for me, undesirable. I've retreated to the little replayable games of generations past, an experience we seldom see from major publishers today, where long game length is treated as an objective good in the name of content. The case for Way of the Samurai in 2025 is that it unknowingly rebels against the decades that follow it. The confusion of starting a new game and not knowing what to do isn't treated like a problem to be solved here, but a meaningful part of the game's flow. A restricted saving system that deletes your saves as you load them, a la Majora's Mask, prevents you from save scumming your way through all of the choices or hedging your bets. Many modern games would probably patch in a more cowardly and conventional save system in the name of quality of life. Quest logs and objective markers would rob the game of its wandering spirit. It's also defiantly short, trusting that its multiple paths and replayable systems will provide value instead of bloat. And they do. Way of the Samurai is a playable diorama and a digital Rube Goldberg machine all at once. Little daisy chains of cause and effect give it an endless sense of discovery and replayability, and it's wrapped up in an immersive and beautiful rural Japan that fuses historical fiction with powerful cultural myth. Its learn-as-you-play philosophy and ability to pick or not pick your own battles challenge conventional game structure. For anyone who tries to tell you that games exist on some sort of linear path of improvement where modern conveniences make everything better, show them Way of the Samurai.